love doing this.
But.
Hold on. Now that's going to be on live that I said that.
It's probably on live.
Yeah, we're live now too. Well, how else were we going to record it to take minutes? You recorded it last year?
Well, it is today.
Yep.
Extra. It works.
Yeah, 40 for council, 60 for pro temp. Okay, well. Don't vote me out in January. Oh, and you gave me food and
Josh, you're going to take over because I'm still trying to answer this question.
Okay.
It's time.
It's time? Yeah. Okay, we'll go ahead and continue the mapped in budget. At 12:30. All right, and we will continue.
Okay.
Go ahead, Josh.
So now we are going to go through an overview of fund balances. So we are taking a look here at the.
On page 12.
Yeah. I guess that's, we are on page 12. That's a good point. So you can see the estimated gain or losses in blue on the left side of each piece of the chart, and then the balance at the end of the year is going to be on the right. Sophie, there above. So on that, I'm talking about the chart just above the graph. Yep. No, ma'am. Nope. The page you're on, page 12. Yeah. So on the left side of each year is the estimated gain or loss, and then the right side is the balance for the year. Yeah, exactly. See, so we can see our projections, our plans for what we think we're going to have in 2021, and then what we would see in 2022. So we can start there with the general fund. There's a net gain there of $529,614.71. Of course, a big chunk of that is going to be the ARPA money we spent the whole first part talking about, which brings our balance up there. So the cemetery at this point, we show a loss again.
But let's talk about what the difference is for the general fund.
Okay.
The general fund, the extra money in the general fund is because we don't have any police officers right now.
Oh.
So the 316,000 of that gain is from ARPA money, but the additional up to the 529,000 is because we haven't had any police officers for a significant amount of time.
And all of the wages come out of
The general fund.
So since we have those wages as part of our budget for this year, then that's why we just have still in there because we didn't spend it. Okay. I don't know how it's doing an awesome job in buying stuff. I know we can't raise, right off it. Is there any way we can get you a let's discuss that. Okay. Let's discuss that at a different day. But yes, there is something going on with that. I don't want to discuss that. So, but let's not do that. Okay.
So then we look at the cemetery. The cemetery shows us, like I said, a net loss of $2,600, which is of course down, but it's actually down less than it has been in years past. So the cemetery is always going to end up supported by the general fund in some part, because we just don't take enough money in from funerals and the perpetual care, that's not enough money to cover what it takes to cut the grass and maintain the cemetery.
Like for this year, we had quite a few funerals,
Mhm.
other years.
Right.
So I would have thought we would have had a lot more this year.
Yeah, I would say, so like I said, when you think about it, that's really only,
We lost less this year than we had in the past. than that.
Right.
right, exactly, yeah.
Because
So
we
we,
usually lose a lot
so-
less.
A lot more.
a lot
A lot
more.
more.
Yeah, so we have lost less, but it's always going to lose some because of that's just.
Unless we redo our rates as we should.
Let's raise the rate for food.
Because you figure if somebody does a funeral and let's just throw some numbers, let's say the city charges them $30,000 for a funeral, okay? That $3,000 doesn't go into our pocket. That $3,000 has to cover the box that the casket goes in, and that's very, very expensive.
You're all the.
Right, and the perpetual amount of it is what we actually get. How much is that perpetual? It's almost nothing.
It's 25% of the sale of graves. And we can't actually spend that money. What the perpetual fund, what the perpetual care fund is it's kind of like a savings account that is supposed to be an interest-bearing account for after we're done selling funeral plots and the cemetery's full and we can no longer bury anybody else. Where is the money going to come from to continue cutting the grass, right? So it's supposed to be a big enough fund in an interest-bearing account that you would never touch the principal, but the interest would always be enough to operate the maintenance. And right now, we're not putting nearly enough money in there for it to get to that point, but we do have still quite a bit of cemetery left to fill up. But at some point, we should probably have another analysis done on that and figure out how much we really would need.
Yeah, I wonder when the last time that was checked, because that's not something we looked at, right? It-
Raise their.
Before, Josh, you mean, what, was that with us? Did we raise?
Yes.
We raised it?
So,
Oh,
But that wasn't for the perpetual care.
no,
that was just the
no,
rates.
talking about rates.
Yeah, that
again,
was just like the cost,
I
right?
think that was somewhere about 2018 approximately.
Or markers, whatever gets damaged, or lawn mowing and stuff. That doesn't have. Right?
Correct.
No, that just comes out of the fund. It just comes out of cemetery.
So,
Yeah, and every insurance thing we have will make our insurance deductible go up. So in the long run, we are gonna be doing one insurance thing, right, for when they sold all of the. Right, but once we get that estimate, are we depending on the amount, we may have to do it. They stole, from the middle of the Bazell system, they stole the big, no, it was like Jesus, that was standing at a 5 foot deep, and then, they sold like 2 or 3 smaller statues off of the grave. So we're getting the estimate, what we gotta do with that is, we have to have the families get us an estimate to replace, and then that's, right, that's, we have them give us an estimate to replace, and then we'll turn it into the insurance company, and then the insurance company will replace it. It's the way that we, but they have to get, this is what it's gonna cost to replace
Yes.
it. Correct.
$1,000 the whole process.
Well, and that's the thing, it's like the lower the deductible, the more we pay
Yeah.
our rates. And really, for a city, $5,000 isn't very much. Because most of our insurance pays for 100,000. Without depending on what it is, we have to pay for. So, that's a city. And then lower the rate, the more we pay. And the more claims we have, the higher our rate goes.
So why can't we go to the whole cemetery and indicate what needs to be fixed? Because there's some stuff that- Yeah, or whatever, and then wait until we have a
would choose somebody and find out what they would cover.
Could
Yeah.
some of
This-
this, could some of this ARPA money go to that?
Probably not, because,
To repair? No.
probably not, because it's not providing a government service.
Oh, I see.
And, yeah, I,
Damaged by our employees. Like, they get them on the board,
Well, what I asked her was, could some of this ARPA money, could we use part of that ARPA money to get?
and I don't think so.
But she said no, because it's not public service.
It's not providing a governmental service for people to use right now. I mean, it's not something that would be covered, I don't think. Really quick before we move on, I just want to say you asked how many accounts were still unpaid. And I pulled that data while we were on break, and there's 66 utility billing accounts that are at least 3 months past due, for a total of $84,441.37. The largest one,
I'm sorry, how much was it for?
$84,441.37 for those 66 accounts that are more than 3 months past due. And the highest of that is actually a multifamily situation, but that one is 10,000 on its own.
One of them is $10,000.
It's a multifamily unit,
Apartment
but
complex.
Is that an apartment?
don't give
or a
people's
house?
private information. It's a multifamily building. I don't know how many units there are, but it's not just one family.
So who's responsible for that?
Whoever owns.
Yeah, for us, the owner is ultimately responsible, and with all of the tenant issues that came up, just like water bills, of them not being able to collect or evict. I don't know how that would be, I have no idea how they would intend to. The largest single family debt is 4,700.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Within 3 months.
With, yeah, at least 3 months past due are these 66 accounts.
Darn.
That's a lot more than.
Well, if they done the application, then like the $4,700 put on a payment plan, but it's only like 12 months, right?
Right.
Isn't the payment plan only for 12 months?
Yes.
Mhm.
So that's like $500 extra a month on water bill. And if they miss one payment on that payment plan, they're shut off, right?
Yeah. The
So
other
they're
thing
shut
is,
off if they miss one payment, and it has to be paid in full.
Yeah, well,
All
the
those
oth-
places that have funding to help
But
us.
then also, there's some guidelines,
Mhm.
right? We're not just
Yeah.
because someone's gonna say, oh, there's a hardship.
So, you know, Sophie, I'll tell you honestly, when that first came out.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to segue there. I just wanted to give you that information since you asked.
Yeah, when it first come out, that program, I know somebody that was like 3 months behind, and they went to go help, and they didn't help them. They wouldn't help them. But then they turned around and helped everybody that was $1,000 or more behind, they helped everybody. But this person wasn't at $1,000, so they didn't help them. It wasn't at $1,000, so they didn't help them. But anybody over $1,000, they right? It was that was the thing, right, Jason, was $1,000 over when CASA paid all the bills.
They did it based on people, that was based on a whole set of circumstances. So people who had been making a concerted effort to pay, but who were more 6 months or more behind still. So they had to be people that were making regular payments, that were attempting to pay, and that were still, however, at least 6 months.
Right.
So if you were
Right.
3 months behind, they wouldn't help you. You had to be that 6 months.
But those rules were put in place by us, between them and us, in figuring out which accounts, because they had a finite amount of money and that they were going to give us. And they said, you guys need to figure out which accounts to pay. So we had to go and say, we can't just arbitrarily pick. We have to come up with a set of criteria to make sure that it's equitable. So to pay off the most debt, basically, to help the most people, We just came up with the criteria that made the most sense, which was people who were making an attempt to pay. Like I said, that were,
Had never been raised or had never been behind. So if that one person would have made $10 payments a month.
Right.
It would have helped them out.
Yeah.
If they don't pay, no, that.
Right.
No, because they were only like 3 months behind. And they had to be 6 months behind to fit that criteria.
well, because there was,
Maybe there's different.
there was too many people, so they couldn't help everybody. So they had to decide. So who has the most need? I don't know. How do you determine that? I'm sure there's a million ways that somebody can skin an apple there, you know? So it was determined by us discussing that it would be that criteria. People who had been making a concerted effort to pay their balances, but were significantly behind. Right, that was just for the ones that was the organization that came to us with the big pot of money and said, here, give this to your citizenry. Yeah.
Like $25,000, right?
No, it was all together, it was like $50,000.
I want to know how much program was that one that you guys decided?
Yeah, that was like $50,000.
$50,000?
Yeah,
And that comes from Casa.
Nuestra
The
Casa,
one from Casa.
yes, it's like, you're in Sunnyside.
Okay. So let's go ahead and move on, you guys. We're gonna be here till 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
Right, so we are to streets.
Okay, now we're at streets. everybody.
Yep, okay. So we see obviously that it is still in the negative, but making steady progress. So
how?
how is
Year
it?
before, you mean?
Right, the year before, right, you can, if you follow that line, you can see where we went from a negative 155, 430 to a negative 144.
How?
No, we'll still be in the negative.
Oh, no, these funds are way in the negative.
Yeah.
Cemetery and streets are both supported by general fund transfers. So the only reason that the street fund has a $10,000 gain is based on the transfer amount that the general fund is putting into it. So that's as much as we can afford from the general fund with our budget when we budgeted initially for 2021.
And remember that this street fund has been in the negative since prior to 2018. And part of this reason is the $200,000 in that was put in the middle of the city that was supposed to be funded and wasn't funded, and that put us back $200,000 in this fund. And that's really what we're trying to bring us.
And that's the
down.
same for the sewer fund. That B Street, that whole B Street group of projects that the city chose to fund on its own, that didn't have the correct money for it.
And we didn't have the money for it. So we funded it. And as you can see,
Well, that
if
Main
you,
Street was part of the M, okay.
right, and so if you go back, like where she's at in the sewer fund, and you go back to 2018, we're $254,000 in the hole in the sewer at that point. And as you go through, you can see how we're getting better and better in the sewer fund. But we're still.
We're trying, like
we're still,
20
we've gained $100,000 in the sewer fund.
in 2020. And that's because 2020, we cut a ton of costs and we did not have, we had only Gordon basically funded out of there. And we didn't have any issues, but then 2021 happened and everything broke, So it's hard to maintain. It's hard to say, yes, we gained $100,000 one year. And then the next year, everything breaks and you're just.
You're just
Yeah.
paying all that money out.
So that's why like that ARPA money is really gonna help us because all the pieces of equipment that we're buying for the wastewater treatment plant, where they would be coming out of our general fund, out of this pocket of money. Now it doesn't have to come out of this pocket of money. So it's just gonna help us later that we're not spending $50,000 in things that we need out there out of this fund. We have that ARPA money that we can.
And since you guys agreed to the ARPA funds prior to lunch, those items, Josh and I are going to go and make some corrections to this because some of those things that did come out of the sewer here will be paid for with revenue from ARPA. So you'll be able to see when we come back together, you'll be able to see this and then to what we've done with making the changes with what you guys approved for ARPA.
Whatever you spend that.
Yep.
Pay it back.
Yep, and you'll see some of that come up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I say all the time, COVID really does, it's not a good thing, it hasn't been a good thing. But for us, it's sort of been a blessing. As a city, it's helped us as a small city a lot. So,
Definitely with our already depressed economy, the whole economic, recovery part of this has been helpful.
And you should have that out too.
Yeah.
Kids, themselves.
Yep.
Our citizens not thinking about
Yes.
something.
yeah, that's true.
Okay, so our capital fund is the next one down with the year-end balance estimated at $77,013.26. Just to remind you what that fund is, that's the fund that has revenue from the real estate excise tax. So as real estate sells in town, a portion of that tax from that sale goes into this account. And it has to be spent on capital improvements for the city. Right now, we don't have a current capital improvement plan. So until we have an updated capital improvement plan, we can only spend it for things that are in our approved capital.
You have one, just not updated.
Right, we have to have it updated. Yes, yeah, we do. It's just that I think the last year that it was through 2020. So I think this was the first year that we didn't have stuff in it that we could do. So
I think we just rolled over what we had over.
yeah,
because-
it probably just needs to go to council and to have it reapproved, and it may not cost, I don't know how much it will cost us, but I think YVCOG is who has helped us with that in the past. Is that correct? Anybody? No, capital improvement plan, I'm pretty sure it was YVCOG.
Yeah.
I think there's other people, you know.
Yeah.
more present on the way. I think when you probably have a pot in it that they take out of.
Correct.
Yeah, yes. So that might be a project to look into this coming year, to touch base with them and see if they can do that. But for the time being, it doesn't hurt us because that money's sitting there and that could be match money for later if we want to go and upgrade our police department or something and we get some funding, but we need some match or something.
Yeah, and we've been really lucky because we're
Unless
funding.
America company.
Well, and like, for example, like the park and ride, you know, they gave us so much money with it for grant, and then we had to match it. So a lot of cities will just say, okay, well, that's our match, we'll write a check. But I went out and looked for the match. So now it's not coming out of our pocket. So
All that,
that's
you
what
got
needs to
that,
happen.
all
Right,
that, that's
right. And so it's stuff like that that helps our city go higher because we're not taking that $43,000 out of our pockets. And a lot of cities will take it out of their pockets because who's gonna let go $180,000? If they say, we'll give you 180,000, but you need to come up with 40. I mean, who wants to let go of $180,000? You know, so that's where I come in. My job part of it is to find that other money, so we don't have to write a check for it. So our accounts can keep building and building and building.
This is being recorded there, and I didn't realize that, so we often think our pages and stuff.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So
Well, the $40,000 was through. I know all the names.
oh, is it the seed money?
Seed, there we go, seed money. Yeah, they come through Yakima County Seed. And-
It's
and
through
we-
YCDA, Yakima
Yeah.
County Development Association.
Right, and that's, the city of Mappin actually had, they told us that we hadn't applied for seed money in over 20 years. And that's money specifically for cities within, in the county. And so, I mean, now we have that door open, and they gave us the money for something that they wouldn't fund anybody else for, you know, because they said, well, all these people want these parking rights, we're just gonna start opening it up. And I said, no, this is a one-time thing, one parking right, we're never gonna get money like this for a parking right again. So, right, right. And we had a really nice presentation. I mean, the presentation was very, very good. And they voted on it before we walked out of the room. They didn't table it, they didn't do anything. They voted and they.
You know,
Well, really, no, yeah,
Yeah,
they were, yeah, they're, well, they really helped and they just really helped. Their part.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, so we don't have to be here all day.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. The next fund is the EMS fund, which has that $249,000 estimated ending fund balance for 2021. So this is, EMS is supported by the EMS property tax levy. And this money gets saved up for when we have to help replace the fire department with the county or buy new apparatus or, yeah. But there is not any big plans for that money right now in the immediate future. So that's the fund that I had proposed to you guys to do an interfund loan from in order to turn the street fund and the sewer fund the right way, using that fund and it's part of the general fund. Because the money is available in that fund and it is planned for future projects, but nothing in the next 5 years. Correct. So we could use that to pay off these upside down funds and pay them back. I mean, it would be on a loan with interest, but.
And interest we pay back to the.
Correct. Yeah, we basically pay the EMS fund interest for borrowing their money. Yeah. It just depends on what you set it as. You as the council would be the ones to set it. You're supposed to set it at like comparable rates to the current day's rates. So the last time you guys did an interfund loan was from the Perpetual Care Fund to the Cemetery Fund. And 2022 will be our last year of paying that back. And the interest amount you guys set for that one was 1%. Yeah. And typically interfund loans you want to have paid back within 3 years. With this, our situation and our economic issues and COVID and everything right now, the auditor's office said that they would probably be comfortable with us going up to 5 years if we did elect to do something. The next fund is the water fund. Sorry, Josh, I know I took over, but there's some of these things I know about this stuff that
I don't. So
Okay.
go ahead. You're not hurting my
So
feelings.
we know that the water fund, I told you guys before that it had been not bringing in enough revenue to support it. But I want you to see that $96,000 for 2021 is not really $96,000. There is this other CDBG money, $77,000 that it's been sitting in a fund called CDBG Well from a previous project. And because of the title of it, CDBG Well, I had glommed it together with the water fund when I was doing this in last year. But it actually, I discovered in this audit process that we're going through right now, was supposed to be used into a sewer project. So I should have had that $77,000 balance glommed into the sewer fund instead of the water fund. So the 96,000 there, that is actually only like 18,000. So the water fund went down $18,000, which isn't as bad as what we had projected. And then the sewer fund below that increased by $9,000, but that's really sad considering what I just told you that I added $77,000 to it. So the sewer fund realistically went down by like $65,000. And that is, a lot of that is going to be fixed when we apply those ARPA funds to some of those repairs that we already made. Well, some of it will. But
Also, something to think about as well. So we have that project that they're proposing on the end of South Street. And it's like 22 units, like 22 or 24 houses there. If that does go through, keep in mind that every single one of those houses, where you get $4,500 for one, is it $45 for water, $5,000 for sewer, how is it, or $4,000 for sewer?
it's $4,500 for the sewer system development plan.
Right?
And a $500 permit, and then water system is $3,500 for the system development plan and a $500 permit.
Okay, so all of that money will go straight into these funds. Yeah, so you times 22 to 24 houses.
That would be a huge help to these funds.
For $3,500, that'd be a huge chunk for the city. 10 houses at $3,500.
And that would help us.
$35,000. No, but there's two different projects, right? There's a project on South Street and then there's a project on Fifth or Sixth. Sixth. Yeah, that's South Street, that's like 22 or 4. And then,
Fifth
the-
and Sixth, that's street or avenue?
so, it's on our side, yeah, it's on our side. Down by, I can't really say who on the record next to that, there's a mechanic. That's
Oh, yeah.
on that end.
Oh, that's it.
Okay, just this side of his mom's house.
Over there by the North Street before you get
Yeah,
to
that
the
big
next
old
street.
vacant
That
lot.
big lot.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
And they've already started houses there, there's one up and one foundation.
This is a big area, it's like 5 or something.
Yeah, it's quite a bit, and they're proposing 44 units, but, right now, they won't be able to put all the units up in that area because our water doesn't support them yet. We have to have our other well drilled before we can really get into a lot of that area. But that one complex is, the one on South Street is 22 or 24. And so you just figure at $3,500 each, or $4,000 each, that money's gonna go straight into these funds. And so that'll really help our fund situation as well, come up and out of the grant much faster. And then if we do the 40 unit housing complex, that can't come in like all next year. I mean, that has to be set back because we have to have the water for it. And right now our water system it doesn't have enough. Our water system is at, I'm gonna say like 550 hookups, 550 hookups, is that what we have right now?
I think it was actually like 650, but they count the businesses, like, it's not just hookups. They call it, equivalent residential units, I think. So ERUs, I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
And so right now, we don't have many more hookups that we can put on the system that we're on right now. So, yeah, the water. So we will have to wait on a lot of that if they all come through, until we get the water, the next well, to be able to provide the water for that. Because we don't have enough water right now in order to provide what we need to provide for all of the new houses. But once well 7 comes in, that's one of the reasons that we're drilling that 7th well, right? We have all that water shallow, and then it'll give us a lot more hookups into our city. So our city, because before we couldn't grow. I mean, the city was pretty much at its hookup. We couldn't grow at all. If somebody wanted to do a development 4 or 5 years ago, they wouldn't have been able to do that. You know, so that's one of the reasons for drilling as well. So we have that extra. Right.
But the other reason that the extra water rights.
Right. And so now that we have the extra water and we have the money to grow the well, then we'll be able to, grow more. Because I know that the new Dollar General is coming in. I don't know how many it's gonna be a big store. So, you know, I know some things
Should be before the end of the year.
It's based on consumption to figure out the equivalent residential unit.
Right.
Does that discourage those people that want to build a home and want to think that 24 or whatever it is? Does that discourage them from, since they can't do it all at once? At least they're gonna do some, or?
Well, they can build them all, they just kind of got.
Well, I think we'll have to be real certain, but I'm pretty sure that we have that many hookups left. I think
For the 20 unit one.
Yeah, for the 20 unit one. Yeah, definitely not for the 40. That definitely
Yeah,
won't be.
so
able
that's
to
what I mean.
So,
Discouraged in your way, or?
no, I don't think that it should, and we'll have to check on that straight up, but I'm pretty sure we have enough, because the last time I checked, we still had like 28, and we've only built like 2,000 since then. So I'm pretty sure we'll be all right there.
Okay.
Okay.
So next fund is the garbage fund. So the estimated year-end balance for 2021 is 21,000. And if you look at the blue column, the estimated gain for 2021 is actually $7,000. The reason for that is all of those garbage issues that we found. So the garbage fund is actually not making a lot of money, but we found so many issues that it increased our revenues for this 1 year while people got caught up on those garbage payments. So then if you go and look at 2022, right now it's estimating a 12-year downturn, and that is based on, or a $12,000 downturn. And that I think is based on most likely what Yakima Waste is going to want to do with their rates and how much they're charging us and how much the billing. Yeah, we're still missing. We're still not recovering all the costs we need to support that fund. They did not officially supply us with anything. I am using my knowledge of what they have supplied to other jurisdictions.
Yeah, because they supplied it to other people already. So we're gonna be.
But we'll see. You never know. I mean, each contract is different. So I like to be conservative in budgeting anyways, which means you budget high for your expenses and low for your revenues so that you don't disappoint yourself and you end up with extra. Yeah,
Right.
yes, yeah.
So all of ours that were behind are choosing on garbage.
I think there's only a couple left, right, Josh, that have
Maybe three
maybe
or
less
four.
than 100 or less than $1,000 left due.
Actual.
Yeah,
And so that's what she was saying, that's where all this extra money comes from.
yeah.
This year, because of all this.
Yeah, if you look back at 2020, the fund increased by $488. But then 2019, it lost $15,000. So it's kind of been up and down.
Those accounts all been taken care of, like, I'm getting them, right?
Yes,
Everybody-
I believe so. I believe so. Yeah.
Of course,
I mean, we
we'll have
still
to
have to
look at
audit. Yeah, we still have to do, just even in general, you still have to keep doing audits because people make mistakes. But as far as we're aware, everything is, yeah, hopefully not. No, definitely not as many as there were before. I can guarantee that, but.
There's been 5 years where nobody looks.
Yeah. All right, so the equipment replacement fund at the end of 2021, because of the money we've put in there, is going to be at 75,000, which is great. We're making good progress. At the end of 2022, we're hoping for 113,000. And at the end of 2022, once we get up to that over 100,000 point is where I think we can start putting our plan together for actually spending some of that to start replacing some of our equipment. But we needed to build sort of a reserve first before we can start pulling out of that, so that we're making sure every year we're putting in more than we're pulling out. And we have a guideline of which things we need to replace in which order. We're not going to use that right now. Right.
Right.
So we're hoping to get that one up so that eventually it can be sustainable. So we're putting in as much money as we need to prepare for the future that we're going to have to take out. So, and then the last one there is the Perpetual Care Fund. So you can see, as we were talking about the loan, in 2019, the Perpetual Care Fund went down by 59,000. That's because we gave $60,000 to the cemetery. And so the cemetery's been paying it back in $20,000 chunks. And so 2022 will be the last year for that. Probably not, because we can't use it for reserves.
Yeah.
Reserves, yeah, yeah. But we may be able to, I don't know, maybe we can find a way to use it for some other type of improvement. And then we can use some of the operating maintenance to put some in the, I don't know, we'd have to look at
Can we
it.
use some of that money to cut down trees? For safety, like safety stuff?
Of course, that's providing a government service.
Okay, we need some money there cutting down trees, because there's 3 big
Okay.
trees that need to be cut down. The one out of the cemetery that's right next to La La Land. That we need to, I'd like to cut all the branches off and leave the actual trunk. And trim all the branches off of it. And then use just the trunk and do something with the trunk. I reached out to a gentleman that used to do a lot of wood carving, chainsaw guy, that he has cancer right now. So, but he gave me the name to like 4 or 5 other people that he said, they need help you out, and that's what I really love to do with that tree, is cut all the branches off and then have some type of wood.
Carve it like an angel or something.
Carve it into something. I think that,
That's pretty nice.
yeah, we have to cut that tree down some so the cameras can get into there and see. And then, there's one that's at.
Central City Park, I know
City
has
Park.
that one that's dropping
That's
branches
rotten.
all the time.
The inside is rotten, and
They had to take.
they had it taped around, and, them trees are really expensive to cut down. So if we can use some of that money for them trees,
Okay,
that would help us a lot, because I figured to do the trees that need to be at least just cut down, just to cut them, is probably gonna cost us 15 grand.
okay.
No, that's
They're
gonna be,
big.
yes, you have to get, and that's a lot. You have to get a certain company to do it.
Government money, we're gonna have to make sure that we're paying prevailing wage, that people are
Um,
insured and bonded,
Yeah.
for sure.
But if this person is insured and bonded,
Yeah, they would probably, the amount of money that we would spend would probably put it in the category of needing to be bid on the small works roster. So anyone who would be interested in getting a project like that may want to register with MRSC for our small works roster.
last year, so. we went to talk to them, but I think one year and a half, it took them really good, it wasn't-
Yeah.
$1,000.
Well-
And they did a good job, the license they bought it, they had their own little truck.
I know
Perfect.
that when the city paid, like in 2016 or 17, when they paid that tree guy to come and cut all the trees down, that tree was estimated to be $15,000.
Because they charge a lot.
Well, one of the reasons is because that tree is like probably the biggest tree we have in our city, and there's all the headstones. So they can't just
Oh,
cut a
yeah,
branch and let it
that's
fall.
true with the cemetery.
Because there's all the headstones, but all the branches will fall on the break, so they
But
have
there's
to,
some people that'll tie it up, cut it, and then lower it.
yeah, and that's what they have to
Yeah,
do.
yeah. they-
So I'm gonna go ahead,
Record, they did not do that job. I had just started in the building.
When we did that before.
They just jumped in and, yeah.
It was not. It was not.
really good. That's the one I'm talking about.
All they can do is bid on it and be licensed by it.
Yeah.
Then they need to register for the small works roster through MRSC. And it's very easy and it's free. You just go in there and you submit your stuff and MRSC puts you on their roster.
And then-
The city had trees broken up and down, they are crazy.
Well, I have one between my house and the neighbors and there's so little space right there. It's gonna cost, it's like 10,000, it's just a pine tree. They're like, it's gonna be $10,000 to take that down, yeah. Crazy.
Where you guys going?
Yeah.
It's right between our two houses and the patios and there's no way we can get a truck in there. Somebody's gonna have to literally climb and take it branch by branch.
Yeah. Really has to treat them. They only charge them 3,000. So where are you guys getting?
I don't know, but I need to talk to your person.
Well, and it really depends, Diana, on what's underneath them. If it's a big tree that they can just cut the branches and let them fall on the ground, it's a lot easier than if it's a big tree.
They have to get a machine in there and stuff.
But there's no house that the fall out so close.
And mine is too close that they said they couldn't get a machine in there.
Well, they park it somewhere over the market or something. That's how you guys don't
Mm.
have the area.
He told me that they wouldn't be able to. The only way that they would be able to do it is if they parked on our neighbor's lawn, yard. And I highly doubt that our neighbors would let them do that, especially because their sewer line runs right under there. So I
they would
don't,
each have to apply and that.
Yeah, the sign up for the workshop.
Small works roster.
small works roster.
Small work roster.
And actually, people that sign up for that, they can make a lot of money because all the cities use that roster.
Another city will call
Yeah,
them.
another city would see them and call them, yeah. It's a really good place. to be.
Okay, sorry, I'm gonna bring this back around. So our year-end balance estimated for the end of 2021 is gonna be about 1.3 million. And then in 2022, based on some of the things we already built into the budget that we know we need to spend and including these ARPA things, We're looking at coming out at 1.45, pretty close. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll go make these updates and come back to you guys with some better numbers since we have some more clear direction. And now let's just go ahead and glance through the revenues and expenditures, and then I think we can be done. So I'll let Josh take over again. These are fund by fund, and he can walk you through it. Starting with page 13.
So, yep. So this has got it's got a breakdown, if you look at the colors there, for each revenue and then each expenditure and where, and what they look like, where they come from, that kind of thing. So for 2022 is what, of course, what we're,
2022 is what we're budgeting right now.
but yeah, 2022 is what we're budgeting. Okay.
So each bar, sorry, let me take back over.
You just do it. I can't.
It's okay, it's your first year. Yeah, I know, no, you do, it's a learning curve. And you know what, talking about stuff doesn't come as naturally to everybody as it does. I am a loudmouth, as my family has often told me. Okay, so the colors on the bar going up indicate the source of the revenue. So the dark blue at the bottom, that's our biggest source of funding. That is taxes for the general fund. So property taxes, sales tax, that is pretty much what supports it. Utility tax, that's the other one. The red is licenses and permits. So building permits, dog licenses, building licenses, business licenses is what I meant, not building licenses. And then green is shared revenues. So that would be like state shared revenues, money that the state of Washington collects and then splits out to cities. And there's multiple different things. A lot of it is for public safety. We get about $120,000 from a city assistance program on an annual basis from the state of Washington. And then those little bits at the end are charges, fees and fines, and then other miscellaneous revenues. So that just is a small portion. So
No, they're read as licenses.
well, actually, no, it's true. Yeah, licenses and permits. We have about $35,000 in building permits this year, which is, I think last year was only 11 or 12. So yeah, if we keep this, but it's hard to build that into the budget because you don't know what's happening.
And another reason that it's not just the building of new houses that's brought that up, is me and Sylvia out there, every time somebody with the roof, somebody will call, hey, do they have a permit? Somebody's putting it up in, do they have a permit? I mean, people are watching that and we're making sure.
Right-of-way permits, we weren't charging right-of-way permits. Anyone who comes, unless they are a utility company that has a charter that we have a franchise fee with, if somebody's using our right-of-way to put up or take down a sign or blocking off traffic, they have to pay us a permit fee for that. So the more people know about these things, the more people call us and say, hey, you guys need to be charging for this permit. Well, the one I'm thinking of is when they took down the Banner Bank sign. And Sylvia marched right over there and said, stop work. You need to go over to City Hall and go get your right-of-way permit. Yeah, because but it's true, and they did. They blocked traffic off. They had the cones in the way. They were parked on our sidewalk, and all of that money, we have to collect that to maintain those facilities, you know.
Another thing with the license, they were not charging late charges after they did not purchase their license for a certain time.
Yeah.
Now I remember.
So we're getting better.
Yeah, there was, so the Department of Revenue helped a lot too with on the business licensing. We've taken in another, I don't know, $600 or $800.
Because we started doing our business licensing through the Department of Revenue instead of doing it ourselves. Well, the Department of Revenue won't issue a business license to anyone who does business in Mabton unless they get a Mabton business license as well. So they can't get their state license if they're located in Mabton without getting their city business license too.
Yeah.
Well, that's any city, right? You can't have a business in any city, but like the cities, now it's just better. We don't have to deal with that anymore.
Well, we didn't know. People would be doing a business out of their house selling eBay,
Mhm.
and they're paying taxes to the Department of Revenue, but we had no way to know. Well, now, if they're paying taxes to the Department of Revenue, the Department of Revenue is gonna make them get a MAP-10 license.
Or
Yeah.
someone who's like brand your sex side and they do your window or you do something and they have to have. Even if they, they have to have it.
If you're doing business in town,
Yep. Oh my goodness, she chased one down. She chased it down. She did. She chased it down. She chased it.
she was a treasure in another life.
And they're like, oh, sure. And they show her the one from the state and she's all, oh, no, we need a map. And, oh, no, you need to take your stuff out. You're not selling ice cream until you get a business license.
They're using your street.
Yeah, for sure.
And I know that there's been a complaint about that, that me and Sylvia go take on, but that's her job. She's a clerk, she's everything legal for our city.
It's 60.
60.
It's only $60.
Yeah.
And Ruth, I mean,
But when I
I'm
was
supposed to
having-
have a permit.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, one of the council members called me and say somebody was pulling off her. Ruth, at this address, do you have a permit? Sylvia looked, no permit. Oh, let's go. Let's go make it.
And who's doing the work? Are they licensed?
Yep, I asked them, do you have a permit? Well, no. Well, we're just helping our friend. It doesn't matter if you're helping your friend. You need a permit. Yeah, your friend has to get the
But if it's
permit.
not a business, then you have to get a business license.
Correct.
I have to go back again on this gentleman that does the car sites, does he got a permit now?
Well, the gentleman with the car,
The one
that does the windows, he has a permit. I mean, he's completely
You're
licensed.
talking about mechanics that deny-
On the highway.
The one that denies being a mechanic.
Yeah.
Does he
Yeah.
have a license?
Saying they deny being a mechanic, but never got a business.
And when we had our previous chief, the chief had plans to find a way to figure out how he could prove he was a business, but we haven't had enough
And it's still
people to,
not, that he's not able to operate, he cannot come to get a license.
he's not allowed to have a business there.
That's what it does.
Right.
So.
Well, we know that, but we have to be able to prove that. How do you prove that?
How can you not?
How-
Yeah, so have them work on your
Because
car and then when you get the
When
receipt.
he says, you know what, these are my friends. They know I work on cars, they bring me their car, I work on their car, they're my friends.
So unless you can show
So
that there's
unless
money
you can-
changing hands,
Yes, unless you can prove that they're actually paying him and he's actually receiving money, how can you do that? Unless you have somebody take their car to him and say, but we're not gonna do that as a city because that's a trucking.
and the other thing that the chief was working on was getting the cars that were not licensed or properly moved, that didn't have tax, because we can do that within our code. So he was working on that, but there's only so, and others, but yeah, there's only so much you can do if the vehicle is properly licensed and it is not in violation of the code, right? And if it's not in violation of the code,
Well, we can't go up and say we need to come get a business license. No, I know that. We can still do it.
There's no business allowed on 241.
and,
If
but,
it's a residential area, the residential is residential.
but also,
There's that old, Rio.
But-
It's a different building.
and the lot has to be set up for, mechanic shops have specific requirements. Because of the materials that they work with, they have to be set up in a particular way, so you can't, even if a place is zoned, like this Snipes Mountain, they couldn't open a mechanic shop here, you know what I mean? Unless they did a bunch of stuff to make sure that their lot was prepared for it.
Well, we went there to see what he was doing. He said it's
Mhm.
Probably recommend.
I wasn't.
Yeah. Do that. Now, I've done my work.
Yeah, because it's just like, well, that's my friend.
Or my.
Yeah, my wife's brother. You know, so in a situation like that, we have to prove it. We can't just say somebody, well, he's doing a business. Well, maybe we are aware of that, but we have to be able to prove they're doing that before.
Does the city have, do you guys recall? I don't recall. Does the city have any ordinances or anything in the municipal code that prohibits vehicles parking on grass or on the lawn or anything like that? Well, so there's, you can only enforce what your laws allow you to.
Right.
So there's other cities that's how they enforce something like that. They pass an ordinance saying it is against the city law for you to park your vehicle on your lawn.
And that's got no, not Washington Park. It's park. You can't Washington Park, that's park. It's park. You can't Washington Park on the lawn. But driveway, people work. We can't even change their oil. They change their oils in the back. And that's allowed, but you can't wash your car. That's the
Changing the
problem.
oil, that may not be allowed. They just do it.
Yeah.
Because it's
That's exactly right.
Okay, so let's go ahead and push forward, guys.
All right, so that's the top chart is revenues, the bottom is expenditures. So expenditures are broken down, it's a little different chart by expenditure type, and then the years are separated out. So the first little group of bars there is for salaries, then benefits, supplies, services, capital, and transfers. You can see that salaries are budgeted to go up quite a bit out of the general fund for 2022, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One reason is that we did authorize the new position for a customer service clerk. The other is that because we have to charge employees from the departments in which they work, we found that our employees in public works are spending a lot more time at parks than we had previously budgeted for them to be there. So we have to charge a greater amount of their salary out of the general fund.
Is that necessary?
It's necessary because that's what the council and the citizens want.
Yeah, but.
Well, right, because you have to figure, 2017, 18, 19, we didn't really have no parks we had Gazelle Park. That was the park that we had to mow, and then, Sheridan Park.
17, 18, and we had all those parts.
But they didn't have grass. They were like, because we just put grass in City Park, and we just come in this year. Right, so we didn't spend the time at the park, so we spend at the park.
There, we have guests there at that park.
At Gazelle Park.
But no, yeah.
No,
no,
we had
no.
it across town. We had, we had community days and everything. Yeah, we had it there.
What are you talking about?
For years.
Oh, back in
The
the
grass and maintaining the park. It's, I mean.
You know what I'm saying?
17, 18,
Right,
not way back.
the reason that there's an increase in it today versus last year, the year before, right, is because we didn't have green parks, we didn't have no parks, we only mowed Gazelle Park.
So the first year I started, I did a study, a time study, basically, to see where the employees were spending their time. And I used 2018 through 2019 data. And so that is how I built the salary distributions for 2020. But in re-looking at 2020 now, the amount of time they're spending in the parks has increased. So now for 2021 and 2022, we have to increase it.
Well, it's gonna increase anyway. We start mowing the park again, but that's
Right.
a big park. They used to have grass too, so.
It takes away from 2020, they didn't have supervision, they spent
Or-
long.
Yeah.
Or 20, and because the time I used was from 2018 to
No, you
20.
have to realize that in 2020, so in 2020,
We didn't have, director who's now watching what you're doing, because talk to 2 years ago, they think it's 2 days, 3 days, it should take that kind of thing.
But also the time study that I used to get the original data is only as good as the data that they were giving me. So, versus once I started and we started paying more attention so that we were accurately splitting the salaries. So perhaps what I'm thinking maybe is that they were always spending as much time, but that we were not splitting the salaries out accurately. And so as we have been monitoring how much time they're actually spending in these places, we have to accurately adjust the salary to compensate for that, because we can't have the water and sewer funds paying for the salary that they're spending in the park.
That's where that's where yeah, there's a fund.
Well, even before that.
Before that.
That's how we were able to
Oh,
do
that's
that.
right. Even though that's very accurate, but that's.
Yeah, we started filling out timesheet logs like first part of 2008. And so that
Record
would be.
now is monitoring how long it's using, so it might get better.
Yeah.
Save time.
At least it's going to get more accurate, hopefully. And that's the important thing. I mean, you want to make sure that it's all taxpayer money. How is that taxpayer money being used to pay for staff? You want the water user rates and the sewer user rates to be paid for work being done in the water and the sewer. You want your property tax rates and your sales tax to be going to parks, right? Parks and streets and things like
Okay,
that.
but
So,
I want to know how long is it taking them now to do the cemetery?
Okay,
Now
let's talk about that. Let's
Oh,
go back.
that's.
okay. So let's see. Anything
And
else?
Call one and talk to me about that, because people that really knows that.
So if we can flip pages, the next one is the cemetery fund. And this illustrates the exact same point. If you look at the first bars on the bottom chart, the salaries in the cemetery fund have gone way up. And that's based on the time study for Public Works as well.
Oh,
Yeah, page 14. And then the revenues, if you look at the revenues for the cemetery, they're made up of charges for service, and then the other revenues, that's all transfers from the general fund. So basically half of the revenues, almost, is paid for by the actual people who are paying for burials.
that's the red, right?
Yep, but the other half is being supported by transfers. But if you look at like 2021, because we've had so many burials, that red bar is much higher, and our transfer amount has had to be much lower because we've had a lot more activity. And then in 2018 and 2019, we had some property tax going directly into there, because it is authorized to do that by the code. But when I came on, I did not like the money going directly in there. I'd rather have it be put in as needed instead of just having it go into there, because once we put it in there, we can't use it for anything else. And so if it comes into the general fund, we can put in there what we need, and then if we need it for something else, we can use it for something else. So that's that. Next page on 15.
Jameson, so just go back a little to the
Sure.
cemetery. So if we was to raise that perpetual,
That would not affect this
that would
fund.
not affect.
Two different
okay,
funds,
Sorry,
yeah.
just asking.
All right, the next one is streets. Streets salaries have gone up a little bit as well. They were another slight recipient of the restructuring of wage pay. But the main thing that supports streets is that shared revenues. So that is like our gas tax that comes from the state. And then also all the grants that we get from the different granting agencies that support the work in the parks. So the estimated amount for 2022 is so high because we're finally going to get that Main Street project, hopefully, done in 2022. It does, yes. And that's the little tiny blue bar at the bottom for taxes. Yep.
You see this tiny
It
little blue bar?
It is there.
Right?
It's crazy that it hasn't moved like it's the same old.
Yeah, because it's the same, hopefully. And then the tiny little green bar at the top is other revenues. That's the amount that we've been trying to transfer in there to sort of help supplement the operations and maintenance costs. The biggest cost in street fund is capital projects. So if you look on the bottom graph for expenditures, the far right says services. That's where all the capital projects are paid for out of. So most expenses are for services for capital projects. And I think our graph is a little off here. Josh, so we need to look at this one because the expenditures for capital projects for 2022 are not correct. Okay, so we'll get that fixed up. One error, sorry. All right, next, page 16 is EMS. EMS is mainly supported by the EMS tax levy. So that's the blue bar. And salaries are what that pays for our volunteers mainly. And then the rest of it gets socked away, like I said, for the bigger expenditures that they'll have to make down the line when they have to replace apparatus or do repairs to the fire station. 17 is our water fund. So our water fund, if you look at 2018, all that green there, that is the grants and loans we got for some of those projects that we're finishing up in 2018. The red bar is our actual charges and fees. And so that red bar is what is supposed to support operations and maintenance. And so it's been pretty steady for the last few years. It hasn't moved much. It's about the same size. But if you look on the bottom, you know, our expenditures, actually, they're not bad. Because, so our expenditures for our water fund and our sewer fund for salaries went down in relation to this time study. So those ones, the salaries actually decreased a little bit in these funds. But yeah, so that red bar is the only thing really that can support salaries, benefits, and supplies, which are your operations and maintenance type things, and then parts of the services as well. And then the next page is the sewer. And this red bar looks a lot bigger, but it's because the numbers are a lot smaller than the previous page. The previous page went up to 3 million, and this one only goes up to 700,000. So it looks huge, but it's not that much bigger. Anyway, the red bar still though is what I saw the look on your face, Diana. The red bar again is the rates, charges, fees, and that covers operations and maintenance. And again, on the salary level here, it is up from our expected salary range at the end of this year, but it is a little bit down from 2020, just because of the redistribution of staff. Next is garbage. And so charges and fees, I don't know why it's in blue on this one, but that's the only thing that supports this fund. And there's very little salary that comes out of here, just some for the customer service staff. But the rest is the services, that's what we pay to Yakima Waste. And that will do it. So we didn't put the perpetual care fund in here or the capital fund because they don't have expenditures. And in conclusion, we are done unless you guys have questions. And then we went through the calendar, the budget calendar at the beginning, but we can look at it again. So the next time we're going to talk about budget is at the council meeting on the 26th. And that's when we'll provide the preliminary budget. So we'll give you guys updated pages to this. And we'll have those updated pages in the council packet. And then, so it'll be available to the public. And then November 9th, we will do the preliminary hearing on the preliminary budget, or the public hearing, and we'll also do the public hearing on the tax levy for property tax, which we're required to do every year. We have to do a hearing for that. And we're only allowed to increase our property tax levy by 1%. So, yeah.
And that's another thing that we, need to just keep in the back of your mind as well as if these projects do go through for housing, the amount of taxes that we get back from the county will, the property tax will increase.
New construction and improvements brings in.
And it'll increase all of the funding all of the monies that we get in the tax base for the house, taxes, property taxes, all that kind of stuff. That'll give us some more funding as well in our own city to use.
Yeah.
So these numbers next year, if these housings do.
We'll
go
start to
in,
get better, yeah.
They'll.
Well, and if you look at the trend, in actual, so maybe when I have the actual, when Josh has the actual preliminary budget for you that shows more of the line item detail, you can see that even though we're only allowed to increase the property tax by 1% for the levy each year, it actually goes up by more than that because people do new construction and they build new units. So you can only increase it 1% for your previously existing amount, but then you get all the additional for the new stuff too. So it usually goes up more like 4%, or it has been for the last few years, I think more like 4%. So then hopefully right before Thanksgiving, we will have our final budget hearing. We will adopt our property tax levy and adopt our budget. And then all the hard work for the end of the year will be done, except for the 2021 budget amendment, which we'll do on the first meeting of December. And then hopefully we will cancel the second meeting of December and everybody will just get to have a good Christmas and New Year's. That would be nice, right? It would be the, yeah, I think it would be December, no, it would be after. It would be like the December 27th or something. Oh, yeah, 20. Yeah, so it would be right there in the middle between Christmas and New Year's. We don't want to do that, right? Yeah.
Oh, maybe not. We'll get it for $40.
Well, as long as everything goes to plan, we will be able to cancel it. If anything crazy comes up in December, we may have to call a special meeting to do a budget amendment because we have to make sure that we have all the money appropriated before the last day of the year. So even though we have to still keep paying invoices for 2021 through January 20th, because we're required to for expenses in 2020 or 2021, if we don't set the budget correctly before the last day of the year, then we're in big trouble. So should an unexpected expense or something like that come up, we may call a special meeting, but hopefully that wouldn't happen. Yes, Sophie, get down here. Everybody will be like, I've been drinking. I'll be like, that's a perfect time to set the budget. All right, so are we gonna close this thing and I'll turn the meeting off?
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close this preliminary budget meeting at 1:45.